Over the past week or so, we've been getting some pretty surprising and even at points just confusing updates from Bethesda. Starfield review scores are dropping, but Bethesda is responding to these negative reviews in perhaps one of the most bizarre ways possible. And although Starfield has been dominating the spotlight as of late, Skyrim is about to take over in a major way, as a new Skyrim update is coming later this week. And this is one that some of you will almost certainly be unhappy about. Oh yeah, and Bethesda has another new secret game on the way. But I'm also going to help you make some insane progress on your holiday gifts. That with today's video sponsor, Ridge. Right now is Ridge's big holiday sale. And let me tell you, Ridge wallets make the perfect gift. I've given out 7 Ridge wallets at this point and everyone's been happy. It's perfect for dad since they are way thinner than those bulky dad wallets but still have room for 12 cards and cash. And Ridge wallets come in all kinds of unique colors, so you know there's going to be something for everyone, like these new Hyper Lime wallets that just recently dropped, or Ridge even has leather wallets now. But hey, maybe you just need a gift for mom, then Ridge's new ceramic powder lineup is perfect, and it'll be hard to regret going with Ridge this holiday season since the wallet comes with a 99-day risk-free trial, making refunds easy, and it even includes a lifetime warranty. But hey, I'll hook you up with a stocking stuffer too with the Ridge key case. My key case saves me tons of room in my pockets and even prevents key jingling, and you will get a better deal if you pick up a key case and wallet together. But don't worry, because you're getting a good deal either way. Right now is one of Ridge's biggest sales of the year, so just by going to ridge.com/JuiceHead, you can get up to 30% off through December 20th. And if you use my link, you can enter your email or number for a free chance to win a Ridge bundle worth $4,000. No purchase is necessary. The first thing we need to talk about is this new update coming to Skyrim. What? So Bethesda functionally confirmed this earlier this week on Twitter by saying, "We're planning on an extended maintenance window for in-game mods and Creation Club services starting the morning of November 29th, with mods and Creation Club services for Skyrim Special Edition being down during this time." And what I think is the single most telling part about this is both the Skyrim mods website as well as the creation kit itself will undergo maintenance here. And yeah, it seems like this is it, the long rumored and somewhat leaked return of paid mods for Skyrim. I've been hinting at this for about a year now. I originally covered this all the way back at the end of 2022, how Bethesda was reaching out to former Creation Club members, and one did leak as much, inviting them to some kind of Creation Club 2 for Skyrim. And beyond that, we've seen Skyrim on SteamDB getting updates on a weekly basis, so they've been working on something, and at one point, one of these work-in-progress branches for the game was even titled Marketplace. And the cherry on top was Todd Howard himself consistently talking about creating new avenues for modders to get paid in interviews. It seems like the wait is finally over, as later this week, Skyrim is going to be getting a new update. We'll be seeing maintenance behind the scenes for the game on November 29th, and perhaps that same day, or even in the following days to a week, this new Marketplace update will be shipping for Skyrim. And what you should expect from this one is something very similar to Minecraft Marketplace, where mod authors who are accepted will be able to list mods for sale on a storefront, and users will then be able to buy those mods for real-world money. And even if you participated with paid mods for Skyrim on one of the other 2 attempts, this time will be a bit different, at least especially compared to Creation Club. With the Minecraft Marketplace, there is both free and paid mods available on the storefront. And unlike Creation Club, the Marketplace model is far less curated. You get in and then you could freely post things as opposed to Bethesda screening every single thing that's listed for compatibility. So on one hand, this could be good in that we're not going to be seeing monthly updates for Skyrim breaking mods over and over again. But at the same time, if you do have a big Skyrim load order or a modded game at all, I would highly recommend disabling auto updates right now, because it seems almost certain that an update's coming to Skyrim this week and at least some of your mods will be breaking. And if you are sitting here wondering why on earth Skyrim is getting paid mods right now, I mean, after all, this is a decade-plus old game, it seems pretty likely that all of this coming to Skyrim is really just a prototype for Starfield. In Starfield's EULA, there is a new listing for something called Creation Credits. The ESRB listing features in-game purchases as an aspect of the game, and even in Starfield's own post talking about mods coming early next year, they explicitly refer to mods as creations, which feels very specific. So I think this is going to be the long-term play from Bethesda. Implement a storefront where modders can list mods for free or for money to create long-term revenue for their games. Skyrim is still one of the most played games on Xbox a decade after release. But of course, Bethesda isn't making a ton of money on all of those free mods being downloaded, but if you do introduce some premium options, and let's say Bethesda takes a, say, 30% cut, all of a sudden you can start passively making millions of dollars off of your old games, or even your new ones, like Starfield. So I fully expect expect this to roll out for Skyrim later this week and come to Starfield next year, even after some of the DLC wraps up for Starfield. Because if you look at it from Bethesda's perspective, this is a phenomenal way to keep Starfield monetized for years to come, especially with all of those Game Pass players who only paid $10 to gain access to the game. And while Skyrim is about to get a surprise and unexpected update, Fallout 4 still has no word on its expected and announced next-gen update. It's been over a year of silence since Bethesda confirmed that a free next-gen update was coming to Fallout 4 in 2023. Pete Hines just recently commented on this. Pete Hines recently retired, but in a tweet he did mention, "I did try getting an update before I left, nothing concrete enough I could share." So I guess Bethesda is just staying quiet on this one. I do think this is going to be yet another example of poor communication from Bethesda. If the next-gen update's delayed until 2024, that's not really a big deal. If it's still coming out this year, it's just dropping late into 2023, that's also not really a big deal. But I think the radio silence is just incredibly frustrating for the thousands to tens of thousands of fans that simply want a 2-sentence tweet on whatever's going on here. But hey, maybe we could be learning more about all of this very soon. Last week, Jez Corden, a notable Xbox insider and a leaker, confirmed that something from Xbox will be present at the Game Awards this year. Last year, Xbox very notably skipped the Game Awards in their entirety. A trailer for the Fallout 4 next-gen update, the Starfield DLC, or hey, even Skyrim creations could make sense here, but it seems like Bethesda does have another secret project in the works as well. As Timor222 on Twitter discovered a Bethesda employee's LinkedIn mentioning an unannounced game, specifically something made originally in Unity ECS, then Unreal Engine 4. It feels like there's a decent chance it's going to be one of Bethesda's ongoing mobile projects. They technically did just release a new mobile game with the Elder Scrolls Castles a couple of weeks ago, so perhaps this is related to that. But hey, at the very least, something else appears to be coming. There's some other kind of unannounced project at Bethesda, and we'll probably find out more someday. But the bigger news to dominate media over the past week was Starfield and some of the outright bizarre or concerning updates around the game. As I'm sure most of you have seen by now, earlier this week, Starfield got a new update. This was the game's biggest update so far, mostly due to the 3 previous updates being rather small. And while this update did bring some crazy improvements to the game, there are still some fans frustrated. And frustrated in perhaps one of the most outlandish ways imaginable. So this update had a variety of bug fixes, some quality of life features like an eat button for food, but the major changes were around optimizations and DLSS support, which is phenomenal. Many Nvidia users saw gigantic performance gains from this one, and even Digital Foundry was praising this one. They are the authority on performance in video games, and their review of this update described the performance gains as gigantic, and that's where the problems on this one begin, because this Starfield update had performance gains that were so large it actually became a problem. Because what is a hilarious paradoxical moment, the fact that Starfield received such a gigantic performance boosting update just a couple of months after release has really called into question how well optimized the game actually was on release. Because of course, Starfield was described as the most polished Bethesda release yet. But as Digital Foundry points out, if you could squeeze this much more performance out of the game this quickly, it's likely that things were just not well optimized or not as well optimized as they could be on the original release of the game. As well as with this update, it was discovered that Starfield continues that Bethesda trend of a max internal frame rate at 165 FPS. Now thankfully, this is not really a huge issue. It's notably higher than the familiar 60 FPS lock of past games, so for a very specific niche subset of users, this is frustrating. And I think overall, just broadly, people are frustrated that Bethesda continues to be the one major player in the industry with these FPS locks. Although not everything about this update was praised. It also implemented HDR support for Starfield, but Digital Foundry took issue with this implementation, describing how the Starfield mod, Luma, does HDR better than the official game update. And if anything, Bethesda should be looking at the mod team there to see what kind of improvements to make to HDR. With that said, the update still did bring gigantic improvements to performance, which is great for just about all of the players. But during that same period, Starfield crossed into mixed on Steam. This got a bunch of headlines this week, but it is kind of misleading. When you go to a Steam store page and you see the recent reviews as well as the overall reviews for a game, this is actually going to be for your language. So for most of you watching right now, Starfield just became mixed because you're looking at the English scores. But for weeks now, if you sorted Starfield reviews by all languages, which is probably what you should be doing, it's been mixed for weeks now on Steam. It just only crossed over for English this past week, which is why so many gaming journalists only just realized. And Bethesda does not plan to just let this happen. They have issued a response, or actually several hundred responses, because as Starfield reviews have been getting increasingly negative, Bethesda CS has been responding to them. Yes, this is not a joke. You could find this immediately by looking at the most helpful reviews on Steam, and on almost all of these, you'll notice a developer has responded. Which, mind you, is not something you'll find for past Bethesda games on Steam. It's not like Bethesda does this and just typically it doesn't get coverage. No, this is just something new and special they're breaking out for Starfield. So what is Bethesda actually saying here? On one review that points out how Starfield lacks a certain magic from past Bethesda games of making the world our own through our actions and even exploration, which this reviewer feels like Starfield falls short on, Bethesda responds by saying, "We are sorry that you do not like landing on different planets and are finding many of them empty. Some of Starfield's planets are meant to be empty by design, but that's not boring. When the astronauts went to the moon, there was nothing there. They certainly weren't bored. The intention of Starfield's exploration is to evoke a feeling of smallness in players and make you feel overwhelmed. You can continue to explore and find worlds that do not have resources you need or hidden outposts to look through." It's okay, definitely a strange response, but sure. How about another review with an incredibly common criticism, Starfield having too many load screens? Bethesda had a response to that one as well. While there may be loading screens in between fast traveling, just consider the amount of data for the excessive gameplay that is procedurally generated to load flawlessly in under 3 seconds. We believe that shortcoming will not hinder our players from getting lost in the world we created. Okay, fair enough. I guess I'm convinced. Load screens are a-okay now. Just think about the data. And it's not like this is stopping on a review from earlier today that describes how things get boring after doing them for the first time in Starfield. Bethesda hits back saying, you can fly, you can shoot, you can mine, you can loot. Starfield is an RPG with hundreds of hours of quests to complete and characters to meet. Most quests will also vary on your character's skills and decisions, massively changing the outcome of your playthrough. Try creating different characters with backgrounds and characteristics that clash or are positive of your previous character. You'll feel like you're playing a totally different game. Put points in different skills from a character you've previously created, and now are faced with completely different decisions to make and difficulties to encounter. There are so many layers to Starfield that you will find things you've never knew were possible after playing for hundreds of hours. On even one post where the game engine was criticized, Bethesda too had a response. "We are sorry that you found the game engine behind Starfield lacking. A new iteration of the engine, Creation Engine 2, was used to create Starfield. Creation Engine 2 is like a new tech base, according to Todd Howard. A major upgrade has been made to the engine's pipeline, AI, physics, and visuals. The Creation Engine 2 introduces Radiant AI enhancements that allows for dynamic interactions within the game's various environments. There are other advancements, including procedural content generation and improved modding capabilities, provide modders with expanded opportunities for creativity." So I must admit, those are probably some of the most outlandish official responses I've ever read from a game developer, let alone a subsidiary of a trillion-dollar company. And the wild part is, it's not like this was like a one-off thing or one dev doing this, then they moved on. No, this has been going on for weeks. There are hundreds of these responses on right now. I mean, just look, as I scroll down the most helpful reviews, almost all of the negative reviews here have some kind of response. Bethesda has been doing this for weeks. As I mentioned, several of the reviews I highlighted to you were posted earlier today, and then got responses in the same day. A lot of these responses are pretty similar. It almost seems like it's AI responding. So if a certain keyword is mentioned, like let's say you criticize companions in your negative review, Bethesda responds with a certain stat sheet or what you could do with companions, and then kind of has a similar response to all of the reviews that bring up companions. And of course, the crazy part about this, of which many of you know, is they're just arguing over opinions. It's not like somebody here is clearly right or wrong, but somebody prefers something one way and then somebody else prefers it another way. To me, this is a horrible look for Bethesda. I honestly think this is somewhat embarrassing for a company of this size to be responding like this. But at the same time, this is completely unsurprising. If you look back at how Bethesda handled some of the backlash around Fallout 76, initially players banned from Fallout 76 were told to write essays to get unbanned. After enough backlash and once they got enough media coverage, that was removed. removed, but also at one point Fallout 76 had open mic, so there was no push to talk. If you spoke, your mic would detect it and you would just be projecting that to everyone around you. Of course, that's horrible. Only having an option for open mic or no mic is really crazy. But in their initial round of responses, Bethesda said that open mic was a design decision for Fallout 76 and they did not want to add a push to talk button. And I noticed something very similar with these responses we're getting here. It feels like Bethesda is basically saying, no, we know best when it comes to game design and how you're playing is wrong. Something I had hoped they learned from when it came to Fallout 76, but here we are many years later and it seems like some of those same problems are still around. But that said, these review responses did not seem to have a meaningful impact on review scores unless it was leading to more negative reviews, which is definitely possible. But the Starfield reviews have actually taken a positive turn as of late. This seems to largely be a result of the recent Steam sale, where many new players got Starfield for the first time. Over the past month or so, things were trending downward for Starfield reviews. At my last point of coverage, over 50% of the new reviews for Starfield were negative. But the Steam sale, a huge positive influx of positive reviews have been added for the game. It seems like many new players are trying it out and really enjoying what it has to offer. Things are definitely still mixed as far as both recent and all-time reviews go, but the trend line is definitely starting to shift towards the positive. Another new update is likely coming. A new beta branch for Starfield was added on Steam, and although not publicly accessible yet, this is how they tested their previous update, and it seems very likely that this is what they'll do for the next one based off this edition. So perhaps later this week or next week, we could start beta testing the next patch for Starfield. Although, Starfield definitely has been getting updates at a shockingly slow pace. In a recent Wired interview, Todd Howard did confirm that there are still 250 developers working on Starfield. That is over half of the 450 developers at Bethesda right now. So I think this paints a pretty clear picture. Starfield got a lot of reviews praising it for being one of the least buggy releases Bethesda has ever had. And as a result of that, many of the devs were taken off of updating the game and instead are working on more content, whether that be official mod tools and a potential paid mod system, or even just this upcoming DLC that many of you watching have already purchased. I think we're seeing small updates for the game because Starfield isn't a buggy game according to reviewers, so Bethesda took that as an opportunity to work more on revenue generating content instead. And even in that original planned features post, Bethesda does describe how mod support is supposed to come to Starfield early next year. So I think that is part of the explanation for these smaller updates. A lot of the company is just working on other things. Typically Bethesda takes a holiday break around mid-December, so I really doubt any more large updates will come this year, but perhaps in early February we see another bigger or more notable update for the game. And the other major story to pop up on the negative Starfield wagon was how Starfield is burning players and how player numbers are plummeting for the game. And this is one of those ones where it really feels like both sides are pretty wrong. You have some claiming this is a non-story and say that of course it's a single player RPG, it's losing players. That's going to happen to all of them and this really isn't notable. While on the other hand, some are pointing out that Starfield losing a ton of players quickly and it is a really bad sign for the game. But the reality here is actually super boring. We're 12 weeks since the release of Starfield and the game has lost about 90% of its players on Steam, since that's the only platform actually giving us player numbers right now. So on one hand, a 90% drop is definitely bad for a Bethesda game at this point. This is worse than both Fallout 4 and Skyrim, with Starfield slightly outpacing Fallout 4's player drop, which many regard Fallout 4 as a more mediocre release. So for Starfield to be doing even worse is definitely not the course correction that many were hoping for. But compared to other single-player AAA RPGs, Starfield has been having better drops than some and slightly worse than some others. So it's one of those things where it's just not really that notable. Starfield's doing slightly worse than other Bethesda games and slightly better than most other AAA RPGs. I would definitely not characterize Starfield's player count as plummeting. It is pretty similar to how most other AAA RPGs perform. And of course, this is just Steam numbers, not even getting into the complete black box that are the Xbox rankings. But overall, those are some of the recent updates around Bethesda and Starfield. The company likely has a couple of big announcements left to make this year, and maybe even one of those will be a last-minute delay of the Fallout 4 next-gen patch. But even just this week, we should have a lot more to talk about with both CDPR and Bethesda, so get subscribed for that.